Hi everyone, welcome to Hit Your Numbers, the weekly podcast for sellers and sales leaders who are serious about hitting their targets. So whether you're an SDR booking meetings, an AE chasing the next big close, or a sales leader building high performance teams, we're here to help you hit your target, boost pipeline, and become a top performing seller. I'm Matthew Terrell, CMO at the Revenue Enabler, and I am here with James Bissell. He is the founder of the Revenue Enabler. Hi James, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Matt. How are you?
I'm good. We're talking pitch decks this week. Great. I know everyone loves a pitch deck, super important for many sellers out there. But let's start with the basics. Okay, James, why do pitch decks still matter?
Yeah, so there's this belief or chatter that goes around on LinkedIn, which you shouldn't be using pitch decks anymore. And there is a very well-known person on LinkedIn in the US who maybe a year or so ago posted this very silly post on LinkedIn, like most of them do, and it said, if you use a pitch deck on a discovery call, you will not close any deals. So I uploaded a lovely screenshot of 75-80% win rates from my HubSpot dashboard when I was a rep, and then also when I led teams, and kind of put all these little montage kind of screenshots together and said, rubbish, you just don't know how to use them. And both the teams that I built used pitch decks. We had them bespoke for personas so that they never missed the mark. And both of those teams as well had massive, chunky win rate. So just be very careful where you're consuming content and who you're consuming it from, because it could have a massive impact, a negative one, on your sales career.
Absolutely. And I think what I'd like to ask actually is, who do you think pitch decks are for? So for the listeners, James and I were talking about this before we jumped on the recording. We were talking about whether you need a pitch deck for a small sale versus a big sale. You know, if you're going B2B enterprise in a large international organization, a pitch deck is definitely going to make sense, right? You've got multiple stakeholders, people coming on and off different meetings. It's a long process. You need something that they can refer to, right? But if it's
Yeah.
a small sale, it's a quick, in and out in a week or two. Do you really need a pitch deck? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the maturity of the buyer. So if you're selling new category technology, like one of my teams were, where everything was typically managed on spreadsheets, and we usually actually hear people say, I actually didn't realize you could do this stuff digitally. I think it's really, really, really powerful in those situations. I think it's really powerful on outbound opportunities of any sizes, because we're typically dragging people into the market rather than inbound. Don't get me wrong, I had both my teams use pitch decks on inbounds, because the next reason is they are really helpful sometimes for telling a story on our differentiated point of view. Yeah. And again, we're going to get into today how you do that, what that looks like. But there's lots of value in using a deck if it's inbound, if it's outbound, if it's SMB, if it's enterprise, and everywhere in between, if it's technology or if it's services. I also find, Matt, some sellers really struggle with discovery. So they end up just if you take spin selling, you got the top letter, which is situation. They spend so much time in situation, they never get to problems because they haven't got a framework to follow. And sometimes the pitch deck, if it's built the right way, it just naturally guides a conversation and helps them get into problem identification and starting to quantify business impact. So yeah, I think it can be used across lots of different situations.
Okay, great. And I want to make this episode full of tips and tricks and things that people can use today. So let's just jump right into it. Okay, so when you're building a pitch deck, you're thinking structure, story, strategy. Can you walk us through the structure of say your highest converting deck? What did you open with and why?
Yeah, so let me give you the 5 slides that I like to have in there. But just before I jump into that, as you're designing or building out these slides, get around a whiteboard with your team and say, right, here's a really good example. So for my last business, we had 3 core personas. It was really 2, but from time to time, a third would get involved. So we built 3. So cold call scripts, we had 3 cold call scripts. Pitch decks for discovery, we had 3. Demo flows, depending on the problems we're solving, we had specific demo flows and decks that aligned with that. So it has to go back to the persona, because if you don't, you'll miss the mark. It's like when a lot of sellers tell their Salesforce story to a 7-person startup. Sounds great, doesn't resonate with me because Salesforce are huge. I've got 7 people. So any deck has to align back to the audience for it to be effective. And then obviously delivery is important. So make sure that your pitch decks really talk specifically to the profiles and the audience that you're delivering it to. And if you don't know what they care about, Go speak to them. One of my organizations, we were very early stage, didn't really know what the customer's voice was, like what language they use. So I just ran a bunch of lunch and learns and had them present to us what a typical day in the life of HR looked like. And then we used that content to build other content for us to go and speak to prospects with. Okay. Now you've got AI, so you can do it in like 30 seconds. You can ask AI, and we've got a bunch of prompts and a bunch of AI tools that you can use to get that information. Okay. So, really important. Just wanted to caveat there. So, those 5 slides are the first slide is that problem slide. Because remember, you're jumping onto a call, let's say outbound in most cases. They have probably just been pulled into the market. Your SDR, or if you're an AE, you've cold called them and you've booked a meeting. At least on a cold call, you've probably had a bit of a conversation. If you've gone outbound by email, you probably sent a very good email. They've replied saying, yeah, let's chat. And they jump on a call. As much as they know about your business is whatever went into that email, which they probably forgot 30 minutes later. All right. So let's start by talking about the problem. Now, why do we do that? Well, nobody cares about your executive team, your investors, the logo slide with all of the logos that have no alignment to their business. You don't need that stuff. Stick it right at the back if you want to have it. But for me, just get rid of it. Nobody cares. So why have it? So let's start with the problem slide. Why? Well, we're in discovery. So we want to discover a business problem. We want to have a value conversation for the customer. So we need to understand where they're struggling. So on that problem slide, Matt, what I want to see the reps do, and again, if you want any content or like to see what ours looks like, just reach out to me. But on that problem slide, I want us to start to call out the enemy and proof of the impact. Okay, so first slide is a problem slide. Second slide, this is where I really want to drive the wedge into the root cause. I call it the root cause slide. This is where you're going to start challenging the customer's assumptions on the problem, and you're going to feature your point of view. So for us, problem slide could be sales organizations are missing their number and 84% of sales teams missed quota last quarter or last year, whatever, right? That's a problem. But it's not the problem to solve. The root cause of that problem are skill gaps. So we need to challenge their assumptions where they think they don't have the right people or the right technology, sales tools. In fact, on our slide, it has on the left-hand side what you think the problem is, but then we say, but there's thousands of sales tools out there which we've all used, but we still struggle to build pipeline and close deals. So is that really the problem? And then what we do is we wheel in the real problem, which is skill gaps. And we highlight nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. 70% of people report they get no formal sales training. So is it a surprise that we miss quota? So slide 2 is your root cause slide. Okay. That you really want to practice and get that right, because that's where you're going to start to rig the game and start to get people to feel like, maybe we actually aren't doing things the right way anymore. Maybe there is time for change. This person really gets it. Okay. So that's slide number 2. Slide number 3 is the before and after, old way, new way. So I actually was on the receiving end of this in 2017 when I was an AE, when I was working for an ABM technology company. We were a very early stage startup, didn't really have a marketing engine going. So it was very much outbound. And I was trying to pitch to like CMOs of Adobe of this world, right? Which back then was tough because there wasn't a whole load of mobile data going around. So it was a lot of email and personalized outreach. And we knew people were coming to our website because we had Google Analytics was, sending us reports saying, 100 visits, whatever, but very little conversions. And we actually got outbounded by a company called Drift, who recently got acquired by Salesloft. And the rep on the discovery call told this fantastic emotional story using a before and after slide. And again, if you want to see what a copy of that looks like, I actually took a screenshot on that discovery call and I've kept it all these years. And every business I've ever gone to, I've built my own version because it's such a powerful way to show the ineffectiveness, I guess, of their current way of doing it and a much better way of doing it, but doing it without calling their baby ugly. And you hear me say that all the time, Matt, right? And usually gets people to crack up, but it's a reality. A lot of people that sell website optimization software criticize a landing page, and they're doing it to the person that probably built the landing page. Doesn't make me feel very good. So that before after slide, we actually want to start to highlight the real problem and then start to tease them and show them on what a better way looks like. So that's slide number 3. Slide number 4. Now is your time to start telling them how you solve the problem. This doesn't need to be 5 pages. This can be one super simple slide that teaches them how you solve the problem in a unique way. And we have a really nice way that we do that. If anyone wants to see it, just send me a DM and I'll happily share some content around that. But in one slide, you should be able to tell a story about your differentiated way, your unique way of solving the specific problems that you've just highlighted and you've primed in the deck on the last 3 slides. Okay, so that's the 4th slide.
So that's a really good point, James. Like, if people want to see this, they can DM you. However, we do have some information about a new course that we've released on the Sales University, which we'll tell you about at the end. So wait until the end, and you might get more value than you expect.
Totally. So you've got 4 slides. First 3, we're priming them and helping them think about their problem differently. 4th slide, we're starting to shift gears. So when we spoke about that new way, that better way, we're now kind of giving them a bit of an insight into how that kind of works and how we do it. And then finally, if you've done a really good job, Matt, up until there, so those 4 slides, people are starting to align. They're starting to feel, okay, actually, do you know what? Maybe that is our problem. Maybe we do have skill gaps. Maybe those are some of the things that we need to solve for. That actually does sound like a pretty well thought out way to solve the problem. I kind of actually think that would work for us. The bit we're now looking for is, what's the proof? Where's your evidence? So the 5th slide is my proof slide. So that's basically going to have evidence, captured evidence from customers, quotes or testimonials or whatever it might be, that actually inspires people. Okay, if you think about a really good story, it should end with this like happily ever after. In a B2B sales conversation, for me, that has to be a positive business outcome. Yeah. So if you think about a story structure in this context, what we want to do is have like feature a hero. So that's going to be my champion by name, by job title, by company. Then I'm going to talk about at the time their current state. So what were they trying to achieve? Why couldn't they do it? What was a negative consequence? Then I'm going to talk about how we solved the problem. We did this, we did that. And then as a result, win rate went up 44%, deal size grew by 14%, time to close dropped by 50%. Yeah, so that last slide is you capturing and showing proof and evidence that those last 4 slides are real.
That is super helpful. I mean, that's it. We're done, right? That's the perfect deck. We don't need to say any more, right? Like,
If it's
case
as easy as
closed.
that.
Just for people listening, you could be someone who's very new to sales. You could be looking at getting into sales if you're listening to this. This isn't always just for sellers and sales leaders. I know we know people listen to this who are thinking about getting into selling as well. So, if you are an SDR and AE, when do you actually use a deck in the sales process, and when should someone avoid using it as well?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different use cases for the deck, and you just have different versions and different kind of slides. So if you're prospecting top of funnel, you're trying to break into like large mid market or enterprise accounts, video can be really powerful because everyone wants to sell to IBM, everyone wants to sell to Oracle, right? But you need to cut through the noise, and part of that is by communicating value. So if you want to do like a personalized video, like a Vidyard or a Loom, I could have a 1 or 2 page pitch deck that's personalized to the company that talks about our unique differentiation and our evidence, and I'm taking them through it. Okay, that's a much better way than me just sending a copy and paste email to the CMO of Adobe, right? So there's that angle. You can use them when you're prospecting. They're fantastic for discovery, especially if you're a rep that struggles to get into problems and get into the root cause issue and start to quantify impact. Just let the slides guide you through the conversation until you can do it without them.
Okay, I've got a question for you. So this is about controlling the narrative. So when you're speaking to a prospect, you might show them this pitch deck, and then what they might say to you is, "Can you send me a copy of that?" And what's going to happen to that copy of it is it's going to be sent to someone else, right? And when you're doing a good presentation or a good pitch deck, you don't want necessarily all the information on the PowerPoint or the slide, right? Because it becomes messy, it's very distracting. People can't read that and listen to you at the same time.
Yeah.
So, how do you control that narrative? Because it means that the person that they're sending it to is clearly important in the discussion process, but they don't get the context that comes with the slides.
Yeah, totally. We had a great conversation the other day, right, with John Billett, and he's an expert at storytelling, and I'm sure he would agree with exactly what you're saying and exactly what we're talking about here, which is you should have a couple of versions. One is for presenting and one's for sharing, so that you can give them the context. One thing that I would recommend doing is if you wanted to have one version, have the main version that you'd present on a call. And if you want to ship it and you want to start to build extra kind of brownie points and be seen as a different type of seller, then as soon as you come off that call, go to Loom or Vidyard or whatever video tool you're using and just narrate over the top. It doesn't have to be like the 30-minute discovery call, but could just be 3 minutes of high energy, high passion delivery on those couple of slides and then ship it. And guess what? You start to add more value to the business. You can put a bit more spin and personalization to the company into that pitch. But also, you start to get notified when people start watching that video.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I'm like, hey, Matt, notice you watched the video. Looks like you're joining the session next Tuesday. This is the agenda. What are you hoping to achieve? And what am I doing then? I'm starting to get single threaded with different people in the organization. I'm starting to get some groundswell, create some other advocates and some other champions, and reduce the risk on having one single point of failure in my deal.
I think there's some great advice there, and I really like the idea of having two versions. I talk about this in a upcoming newsletter, and it's about whether you own the pitch deck as well. So in a large organization, you might not own the pitch deck and you might want to customize it to a certain prospect, right? But if you're a big organization and your marketing team have it on lockdown because they're worried about reps putting in, I don't know, wrong customer logos, going a bit rogue, going a bit off brand, which happens. I've been there, I've seen it, which is why things like that get put on lockdown. I just wanted to say, actually, like, if that is you, if you are in an organization who has a marketing team or a sales enablement team that controls these pitch decks, these slides, these branded assets, you really need to be on top of it, because sometimes it can take a week or two to make changes to it. And I know that sounds like an excessive amount of time, but depending on how big your marketing department is, someone could be at an event, someone could be in meetings all day. And in my experience, I would have a sales rep message me or email me, or I don't know, shout over the office and say, "Hey, Matt, I need a updated branded slide for this customer." And I'll say, "Great, when's your meeting?" And they'll say, "Well, it's in 2 hours." I'm like, I'm literally just about to walk into a meeting room. Like, there's no way you're getting that from me, okay? As much as I
Yep.
want to give it to you, because my goal is for them to win, right? I want them
Yep.
to close that deal. I want them to get that customer. That's what pays the bills. But I can't turn around to the managing director and say, "I'm sorry, the meeting's cancelled because John over there has has a demo in 2 hours."
Yeah.
So just my 2 cents on that. Like, make sure that you either have ownership, you've got a copy of it, it's up to date, or just make friends with the marketing team, because they'll give you a copy of it. And if you're a good seller and you're nice to them, they'll give you edit access. Top tip.
Yep. 100% they will. Yeah, there
Maybe
you go.
that's just
Insider
me.
insights. You're just too much. You're just such a nice person. You're such a friendly marketer. We need more marketers like you in the world, Matt.
Potentially, yeah. I will say though, like, if I'm being completely honest, I've worked with teams where there were certain sales reps that I would trust with content, and I would
Yeah.
happily give them anything and just be like, "You know what, edit it," because you know that they're going to bring in loads of money because they always
Yep.
got like huge deals, but also they were very trustworthy. They were very respectful of what you gave them. They didn't just take it and just change the language and put screenshots and whatever else into it. They worked with you on it, and they built up a trust with the team to the point that they were super independent, and they got more sales in because they didn't need to ask us for anything. We marketing team were not a backlog for that business unit. you know
Yep.
so number one tip, use the assets, be friends with marketing, but use it wisely and build trust with the team as well, because you'll get what you
Yeah.
want quicker.
Well, let's solve the problem. Let's actually solve the real problem right now, right? So we built a course, right, a new learning path, so that sellers can see the templates, placeholders, and then we probably shouldn't, but we did it anyway. We gave them, access to the one that we use when we're talking to sales leaders when we're pitching, our programs, right? So they can see, that's what good would look like. So rather than having this worry, enablement, or marketing concern, if we give them access, they'll just tweak it, put some little white lies in there to win a deal, and we'll never really know, and we'll get a bunch of complaints. Let's actually just solve that problem by teaching our sellers the right way to do things. So we've got it coming out next week, brand new learning path where we're going to teach you where sellers get them wrong, where they make mistakes in building and delivering a pitch deck and how to use it. and then we give you the placeholders, and then I kind of take you through the pitch deck that I'm using when I'm talking to VPs of sales and CROs to present our offering and to get them to think about their problem differently, just so that you can kind of, as you're building yours out based on the templates, you can see what good looks like so that you put your best foot forward. So I highly recommend, if you're in the sales university, go check that out. I think when we drop this, Matt, it should be available in their dashboards, right?
Yes, that's correct. So if you are an advanced or elite member of the Sales University, go to the learning paths and courses on the menu on the left-hand side, or click on courses at the top if you do have that option, and you will
Yeah.
see pitch deck ready. It's all ready to go for you. And if you are listening to this today, go and check it out now because it might have launched already.
Yeah, 100%. And if you want any more information on it, just reach out to one of us.
Absolutely. Well, I say reach out to one of us, James. I'm going to point them swiftly in your direction because I feel like you are the main man to go to for all of these questions.
Come
But
to me.
in saying that, I am more than happy to help answer any questions, especially from a marketing perspective. You're more than welcome to DM me on LinkedIn as well. But yes, as James mentioned, there is a new course. This actually comes on top of 2 new courses that have already been launched. So that is ghosting ready and trap setting ready as well, which are both in the Sales University next to pitch deck ready as well. So, and don't forget, you can get yourself a free Sales University account if you haven't already. Just go to the revenueenabler.com and click on get started for free. All right, James, pitch decks. Any final thoughts?
If you get the right one, they can be transformational. If you use the wrong one, they can have a massive negative impact. So just make sure that the content that's going into them is sound. It's coming from a trusted source. And also I'll leave you with, don't listen to all of the information that you read on LinkedIn. There's a lot of fake news out there. So just be really careful with where you're consuming your content, because yes, that person probably was right. If you use the wrong pitch deck, you won't be successful. But it wasn't like positioned like that. It read like, if you use a pitch deck, you won't be successful in sales, and that's absolutely wrong. And most sellers, unfortunately, aren't properly taught how to sell. So when they run discovery, they struggle to get into problems. And then they struggle to actually articulate value, which is why they probably lose so many deals to status quo, because they struggle to articulate the value of change. So prospects are like, yeah, do you know what? It gets the job done. Don't really understand the full value. And a pitch deck, if used correctly, can help you with both of those things. So yeah, I'll leave that with you. If you use the wrong one, it will hurt your success. If you use the right one, it will help you be successful and help you earn a lot more money and hit your numbers.
Absolutely. And always think about what you read on LinkedIn.
Always.
Always. ChatGPT has not done LinkedIn any favors. I mean, I love LinkedIn, but the amount of times I see posts on there, you can always tell it's ChatGPT these days, but people love to just put in a controversial hook just so that you'll click on their post.
Yeah,
So my thinking is, when someone said you'll never win a deal with a pitch deck, it's probably because they probably wanted a few comments, right?
probably. But isn't that sad at the same time? Like, I'm all good for like hooks that are inspiring us and educating us, but when it's just to get engagement, yeah, not helpful.
Well, exactly, and it's really not helpful when it's just for engagement because it can be misleading. So, which is
Yeah,
why we have a fantastic trusted source called the Sales University, James. Yay!
exactly. Exactly.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's a valid point. Like, if you do want to really learn about B2B sales and how to really hit your numbers and all the success that James talks about in our last episode, if you haven't gone back and listened to the last episode, James talks about how he increased the number of meetings booked, reducing the time to close, increasing win rates. If you want to do all of that as a seller, go back and listen to that podcast, but also go and get yourself a free account in the Sales University. Start accessing those resources because that's your first step, right? If you want to become a top seller, you've got to look at credible information. You've got to look at trusted sources. You just can't look at everything you read on the internet, right? You need
Agree.
someone who's got the proof, got the receipts. And what I didn't mention in the last podcast actually is we already sent out some receipts in an email. So if you're not on the Hit Your Numbers newsletter, please sign up because you just missed out on seeing some amazing win rates. In the last episode, we talk about win rates hitting something like 54%. But actually, in that receipt, it was one of them was 83. Is that right, James?
Yeah, totally. So when I was a rep, I got really good at executing trial signups. Again, I just like changed my sales process in the way that I executed the sales process depending on the type of opportunity I was working. So outbound versus inbound demo versus trial sign up, they're usually at different stages of their process. So you just tweak the playbook. And I just got really good at executing the plays for different types. And we found that on inbound signups, I was knocking over, in a successful way, 83%, which is bonkers. So didn't used
Bonkers.
to be that way. I tell you, I probably wasn't winning 3% when I first started, but it took time to figure it all out, and then just fine tuned it, and yeah, had a great run.
Oh, that's good. And here you are, you can't go from 0 to 83 straight away, right? It's a journey. It's a learning path. And if you're not on that path, jump on it now, because the sooner you are, the sooner you'll get there. In fact, one of my favorite slogans is, what you do today determines where you'll be in 6 months. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you saw me move because it's actually written on my desktop wallpaper.
Love that. It's so true though.
It's absolutely true, and I love it. And I think it's just a reminder, if you want to be somewhere in 6 months, you've got to start today. So we're going to sit here and encourage you to go to the sales university, but whatever it is you need to do to be a better seller, if you need to learn another language, if you want to break into a new market, the actions you take today are going to determine whether you're going to be successful in that in 6 months, right? So you've always got to start somewhere. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for listening to Hit Your Numbers. We hope you walked away with at least one idea you can use to move the needle today. And don't forget to sign up to our B2B sales newsletter, Hit Your Numbers. It's on the website, therevenueenabler.com. We've already mentioned we've got 3 brand new courses: Ghosting Ready, Trap Setting Ready, and Pitch Deck Ready. They're all available in the Sales University. Go and have a look at them if you're in there. If not, grab yourself a free account today. And we look forward to seeing you next week.